Hey guys, this video is called Fits in the Ohka, but honestly it's more like unfucking the Ohka, because you can't really fix a plane that's pretty much a 1.2 ton warhead attached to a triple rocket engine and a cockpit. I mean, you gotta like have something at a certain degree of quality before it can be fixed. If it's below that, it needs to be like unfucked first before it can really be considered, fixable. Like the two most obvious fixes for the Ohka is a better delivery system, which is replacing the G4M flying cigar Betty, because it's slow, poorly armored, and it has really shitty defensive armament. So they got shot down before even reaching the enemy warship fleet. And the other obviously is better construction materials and methods. It's not easy to fly a plane that's powered by a rocket with like a pair of shitty ailerons and a rudder when they're being made by schoolgirls. Literally. So I'm gonna be talking about the a little less obvious fixes for the Orca. First one is the fuse. This is a big problem, not just for the Orca, but for Japanese capital ships in general. Basically, the problem was that the fuse was a lot longer than the fuses that were used on board, really on board, but on shells for capital ships by other powers, around 0.4 seconds. And the reason for this was Legion. No, it wasn't Legion, but there were a few reasons. First was that obviously they were meant to penetrate the heavy armor, the thick armor of enemy capital ships, which meant they had to have longer fuses, so they would get all the way through the hull before exploding. But more important than that, they were designed in the 30s, when the Kantai Kessen doctrine was still the main idea for any confrontation with a foreign power. This meant that the ships were designed and tactics were built for their use in ship-to-ship, battle line to battle line slugfests, right? And the theory was that the shell had a long fuse so that, one, it could penetrate through armor if it actually hit the ship, or two, if the shell landed a bit short of the ship, the enemy ship, right? They were designed to have a of a somewhat stable underwater trajectory, which meant that no matter what angle the shell would hit the water at, it would still go relatively straight forward, where any other shell would just kind of like veer off into the abyss. The Japanese shells were designed to be able to go relatively straight and basically hit the enemy ship under the armored belt, hopefully penetrate in that weak section, right, and explode like a torpedo, a giant 1-ton torpedo. That's not actually a torpedo, but it would add like one, and would still be a valid hit, even if the actual landing point of the shell was a bit short. And that's exactly what happened when Yamato hit the escort carrier USS White Plains in 1944 at Samar, right? The shell itself landed a bit short, but since it had a somewhat stable underwater trajectory, it was able to go straight forward and explode underneath the hull of White Plains, taking out gyros, steering, lights, electricity, all that good stuff. But of course, that longer fuse meant that when you were using the capital ships against destroyers, light cruisers, and escort carriers, and you didn't hit like the water and you hit the ship itself, the shell would go straight through the armor on both sides of the ship, come out on the other side, and explode outside the ship, which obviously is the wrong place for a shell to explode if you want to sink the ship. And that really wrecked U.S. Japanese capital ship performance at Guadalcanal, Samar, and Surigao Strait, among others. And this problem was present in the Ohka, because the Ohka, in spite of its pretty shitty, honestly, delivery platform, the G4M, managed to hit, I think, 7 ships, right? And of those 7 that were hit, I think 4 were sunk and 3 damaged. Might have been the other way around. Probably was, because most of them, right, the Ohka would go, like, the ships that were hit were mostly destroyers or landing ships, or like cargo ships. And what happened was that since they were really thinly armored, the Ohka would punch straight through both sides of the ship and explode on like the opposite side of the lateral ship dimension, fancy words, and would pretty much leave the ship unharmed except for a giant fucking hole in the middle of the ship. Which of course is a lot less deadly than, having a fucking Orca explode like inside your ship. Now, how to fix that? I think there are two methods. Two big methods would be, one, change the fuse settings. Yeah, they were being cheaply built with what was available, but considering that depth charges could be set to explode at different depths, I'm pretty sure that if you spent like another day or two on the Orca construction on the assembly line, you would be able to have a mechanism, mechanical mechanism, I guess, in which the pilot would fucking flip a lever or whatever, like into the cockpit, right? And there'd be a setting for like 0.4 seconds for capital ships, battleships, heavy cruisers, and carriers, and a lower setting for 0.01 seconds, like almost instantaneous explosion. Considering that the Orca is flying at well over 1,000 kilometers per hour, thanks to the rocket engines, you would have a really short fuse that would just barely get through the armored belt on a destroyer or cargo ship, and would actually explode inside the ship instead of fucking exiting outside on the wrong side and exploding without causing much damage. Of course, this would require some more training for the Orca pilots to help them identify between battleships, heavy cruisers, and light cruisers, and destroyers, and so forth. But really, having well-trained pilots is never a bad thing, even if they're suicide pilots. When I said there would be two, I lied. There's going to be three. The second one, of course, would be replacing the propellant system. Instead of using the triple rocket things, you could use a jet, which actually was a design that was in progress when the war ended. It was a jet powered, slightly slower, of course, which meant they would be more prone to being intercepted by fighters or anti-aircraft fire, but they'd be a lot more controllable, which means that the pilots aim at the ships better, and since they're flying slower, they travel less farther. That's not a word. It's not a phrase. I don't know. But they would travel a shorter distance in the time it took for the fuse to activate, and that would I actually lied twice. It's not gonna be three. It's gonna be four ways to improve the Orca. But anyway, yeah, have an alternative fuel system, because then jets give you a bit more range for your fuel. So while the original Orca with the rocket engines only had a range of around 37 kilometers or so, I guess the jet-powered one would have a longer range, and they would be a lot easier to get off the ground, like a ground or cave-based Orca, which was also a plan that was going to be enacted, which was they would hide the Orcas in caves, right, and then they would roll them out on on the rails, and they would fly off into the distance in the event of Operation Olympic, which was the planned U.S. invasion of the Japanese mainland. Either way, yeah, you could have a rocket-assisted takeoff mechanism. Like the space shuttle, right? And you have the fucking tubes on either side of the orange big tank. Yeah, you could have smaller versions of those on either side of the Orca, and have them give the Orca distant height, altitude, and some speed, and then turn on the jet at a decent altitude. I think then you could maybe have a better chance of hitting U.S. warships and do more damage. The third option, I think, would be to improve tactics. Even if you still have to work with that shitty 0.4 second way too long fuse, by improving the training and tactics, you could actually do a bit more damage. Because the problem was a lot of time, the Ohka pilots would aim from the side for any warship, for especially destroyers, which meant they would punch straight through. But if you aim if you dive deliberately from at the most right angle you can, then what would happen is that you would punch through the hull of the ship, the deck of the ship, through the bottom, at which point your fuse might go off and your bomb would explode, and it would basically be a giant modern torpedo, because a modern torpedo doesn't make contact with the enemy ship. It goes underneath the ship, explodes, and lifts the ship up in the air, sort of, and brings it crashing back down, breaking the keel. This kills the ship. And what you would have with this tactic would be for destroyers, light cruisers, escort carriers, and landing craft and cargo ships. You have the Ohka crash into the front-ish area of the ship, leave a giant fucking hole in the deck through the hull, which is considered to be a bad place to have a hole when you're in a ship, like where it hits the water, because then the water's gonna come through and it's gonna sink the ship. It's gonna be, you have a hole in the bottom of the hull. Plus, you're gonna have a giant ass explosion lifting your fucking ship into the air, bringing crashing back down, just fucking Arizona the entire ship. And then, of course, for battleships, you could just aim for the side, because the armor's thick enough to slow down the Ohka sufficiently so that it would explode inside the ship. Finally, the fourth option would be to have two different types of Ohkas. One with the armor-piercing warhead, and the other with a high-explosive warhead. Which would be a lot, which I guess would be more simple to make than the lever system that I talked about earlier. And if you had two types of Ohkas, depending on the mission, you could carry high explosives for picket line ships or cargo ships, and AP Ohkas for high value targets like battleships and carriers, and for a mission against a battle group, you could have a mixed brigade, mixed squadron. And so, like, the high explosive Ohkas would go in first, at least wipe out some of the anti-aircraft guns, or outright sink a destroyer or two. And then the AP ones would go straight through, would have a clearer path, not really a clear path, but a clearer path to hit the high value targets like battleships and carriers. But of course, I think the most likely to be successful one will be the idea of having two fuse options, one normal, one short, because even without replacing the warhead with a high explosive charge, the AP warhead for the Ohka should have enough power to probably either outright just wreck, hashtag wrecked, a destroyer, or just fucking split it in half. It's since either way. Probably for a cruiser, and it might not outright destroy it, but I think it would definitely either sink or really heavily damage a light cruiser or an escort carrier. For a battleship or a fleet carrier, it might knock her out of action for a month, 2 months, 3 months. Because if it activated the avgas or the munitions, it's done to up in flames. Like USS Wasp, it's a pretty early example, but got hit by a few torpedoes and sunk outright because the avgas got turned on. Was it the avgas? It was either the avgas or the munitions that got hit by a bunch of flames and just went up and just fucking got wrecked. So that's how I would unfuck the Ohka, and then from then on you could turn around and try to fix it with and turn it into a really pretty deadly weapon if it was used correctly. Mostly by just better materials and better construction if possible, at least a better delivery system. Also, the reason why this one's out a bit late is because 2 days ago, I think, I got into the track team. And dude, it took me 3 tries, right? I'm a sophomore right now in high school or whatever, right? I tried out in the fall of freshman year, didn't get in. Tried out in the fall of sophomore year, didn't get in. Tried out 2 days ago, I just barely got into the track team. Now I need to do crazy exercises and stuff. So I'm gonna be pretty tired. I actually had a practice or I don't know, whatever, today. But I'm not too tired. It wasn't that bad. Because honestly, I don't really think that track is a sport. It's like an exercise. Like baseball is a sport, but baseball has components like running, throwing a ball, hitting a moving ball with a stick that's really fucking thin. I think I have 3 hit balls in my entire life in actual games, But anyway, it's not. It's a component of a sport. It's impressive and it's an exercise. It'll get you in shape, but that track itself isn't. I don't think it's a sport. It's more like a competition of how how fast you can run or how physically fit you are. Well, a sport is like a game with like rules that like being in shape helps, but it's not a competition of how fit you are. It's a competition of how well you can play the game. There's a big difference, I think. That was my 1.5 minute rant on track and field. Probably less than 1.5 minutes, but whatever. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.